That single plate of corn and beans cost Sarah her dinner, but it bought Joseph a future worth billions. Sarah, 24 years old and black, saw the shivering white boy in the torn gray hoodie. She didn't see white trash or a trespasser. She saw a starving child. She handed him the plate. He ate with dirty hands, shaking. She gave him everything when she had nothing to spare. When the social services car came, Joseph gripped the porch railing and made a solemn vow. "I will pay you when I'm rich." Sarah smiled sadly, smoothed her red floral dress, and watched him vanish. 20 years later, Joseph was a billionaire. Sarah was facing eviction. Today, a sleek black car would roll down the dusty road of her Alabama farm. She was holding an eviction notice. He was holding a checkbook. Neither knew the payment wouldn't just be money. It would be a war for the soul of the town. Before we begin, if you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that'll restore your faith in humanity. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community span the globe. Alright, let's dive into today's story. Joseph Miller had built an empire on precision and fear. In boardrooms from Tokyo to London, grown men stammered when he entered. He dismantled competitors with a signature, crushed hostile takeovers before breakfast, turned failing companies into gold or ash depending on his mood. Forbes called him the algorithm, cold, calculating, impossible to predict. What they didn't know was that the only equation that mattered to him had been unsolved for 20 years. The dossier arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. His private investigator, a former FBI analyst named Diane Reeves, didn't use email for sensitive findings. She used a courier, hand-delivered, eyes only. Joseph dismissed his chief of staff mid-sentence and tore open the envelope. Confidential report. Subject: Sarah Mae Jenkins. Status: located. Critical. His hands went numb. Current address: 2847 County Road 16, Crenshaw County, Alabama. Age: 44. Property status: foreclosure proceedings initiated by Apex Holdings LLC. Eviction date: Thursday, March 14th, 8 a.m. Time remaining: 36 hours. Attached was a photograph. Recent. Surveillance quality. Sarah standing on a porch he'd seen in his nightmares for 2 decades. But she was different now. Gray streaked through her braids like winter roots. Her face was lined, tired. She was holding a cardboard box, staring at nothing. The photo was time-stamped. Today. This morning. Joseph's chest constricted. He flipped to the next page. Property liens. Tax documents. Legal notices stamped with the Apex Holdings logo. A company he knew. Predator. They specialized in land grabs, pushing out families, paving over history for pipeline easements and industrial parks. One line burned into his vision. Sheriff-assisted eviction scheduled. Occupant non-compliant. Force authorized if necessary. They were going to drag her out. In 36 hours. 1,200 miles away. Sarah Jenkins sat on the floor of her childhood bedroom surrounded by boxes she couldn't bring herself to fill. The farmhouse was stripped nearly bare. Furniture sold. Silverware pawned. Pictures taken down, leaving ghost rectangles on faded wallpaper. All that remained were the things she couldn't part with and the things nobody wanted. Her hands, calloused from years of holding on, trembled as she wrapped her mother's Bible in newspaper. The eviction notice sat on the windowsill, backlit by the Alabama sun. Final. Official. Inevitable. She'd fought for 3 years. Refinanced twice. Sold everything that wasn't nailed down. Worked double shifts at the diner in town. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. Apex Holdings had money, lawyers, politicians. She had dirt under her fingernails and a last name that used to mean something. A tear fell onto the newspaper. Then another. She didn't wipe them away. What was the point? By Thursday, this house would belong to strangers. By Friday, bulldozers. By next month, a pipeline carrying oil through land her grandfather had bled for. She looked out the window at the porch where she'd fed a starving boy 20 years ago. Wondered, not for the first time, if he'd even survived. If he ever thought about the woman who'd given him corn and beans when she had nothing else to give. "You ain't coming, baby," she whispered to the ghosts. "And I don't blame you." Joseph stood abruptly, sending his chair backward into the window. He grabbed his phone, dialed his aviation coordinator. "Sir, prep the Gulf Stream. Flight plan to Alabama. We leave in 1 hour." "Sir, the shareholder vote is tomorrow morning." "The board specifically." "I don't care. Cancel it." "Mr. Miller, they'll be furious." "Then let them be furious. Get the jet ready. Now." He hung up, looked at the photograph one more time, touched Sarah's face through the glossy paper. "I'm coming," he said to the empty room. "I'm 20 years late, but I'm coming." He grabbed his coat and walked out, leaving $400 million worth of merger documents unsigned on his desk. Some debts were bigger than empires. 20 years earlier, Joseph Miller was 10 years old and convinced he was going to die in Alabama. He'd run from the foster home at dawn, barefoot, wearing nothing but a torn gray hoodie and jeans 2 sizes too small. The Hendersons had been his third placement in 4 months. Mr. Henderson had a belt and opinions about ungrateful trash. Joseph had the bruises to prove it. So he ran. By nightfall, he'd covered maybe 12 miles through back roads and cotton fields, staying off the highway where police might spot him. His feet were bleeding. His stomach had stopped hurting hours ago. Just a hollow, dizzy emptiness now. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. That's when he saw the barn. It was old, leaning slightly, paint long gone. But it had hay and shadow and a loft where he could hide. He slipped inside as the sun set, climbed into the hayloft, and curled into a ball, shaking. Not from cold, from fear, from exhaustion, from the certainty that this was how it ended. Alone, forgotten, buried in someone else's barn. He woke to a woman's voice. "I know you're up there." Joseph froze, heart hammering. "Saw you come in last night from the kitchen window. Been waiting to see if you'd come out on your own." A pause. "You look like you haven't eaten in a week." Silence. Then footsteps on the ladder. She appeared at the edge of the loft. Young, mid-20s, black, wearing a red dress with small white flowers. Her hair was in long braids. She wasn't holding a phone, wasn't holding a weapon, just looking at him with eyes that made his chest hurt. "Come on down," she said gently. "Let's get you some food." Joseph pressed himself against the wall. "I ain't got no money." "I didn't ask for money," Sarah said. "I asked if you were hungry." She waited, patient, not moving. Finally, Joseph climbed down, legs shaking so hard he almost fell. Sarah caught his elbow, steadied him. Her hand was warm. She led him to the farmhouse porch, told him to sit on the steps, disappeared inside, returned 5 minutes later with a plate. Corn, beans, cornbread, still warm. Joseph stared at it like it might vanish. "Go ahead, baby," Sarah said, sitting beside him. "It's real." He ate with his hands, shaking, tears streaming down his dirty face. It was the best thing he'd ever tasted. When he finished, she brought water, a napkin, sat with him in the quiet while fireflies blinked in the fields. "What's your name?" she asked. "Joseph." "I'm Sarah." "You got somewhere to go, Joseph?" He shook his head. "Thought so." She stood, brushed off her dress. "You come back tomorrow evening. Same time. I'll have food waiting." "Why?" His voice cracked. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. "Because you're a child, and you're hungry, and that's enough." She kept her word. So did he. For 7 days, Joseph appeared at dusk. For 7 days, Sarah fed him on that porch. They didn't talk much. She asked no questions. He offered no explanations. Just ate, and breathed, and remembered what it felt like to be human. On the 8th day, a sheriff's car rolled up the dirt road. Someone had seen him, reported a vagrant boy near the Jenkins farm. The deputy was kind but firm. Joseph had to go back into the system. Another home, another chance. As they loaded him into the back seat, Joseph broke free, ran to Sarah standing on the porch, gripped the railing with white knuckles. "I'll pay you back," he said desperately. "I swear." I'll get rich and I'll pay you back for everything. Sarah knelt down, eye level. Smoothed his wild hair. You don't owe me nothing, baby. You just live. You be good. You remember somebody cared. The deputy pulled him away gently. Joseph pressed his face against the car window, watching Sarah get smaller and smaller, her red dress bright against the white porch. I will pay you when I'm rich, he screamed. Sarah raised her hand. Not waving. Promising. The car turned onto the highway, and she disappeared. But the promise didn't. Sarah heard them before she saw them. Engines. Multiple. Coming fast up County Road 16. Kicking up red dust that hung in the air like a warning. She moved to the window, looked out. 3 black SUVs, expensive and gleaming, completely wrong for a dirt road in rural Alabama. Her stomach dropped. Apex Holdings. Had to be. Coming 2 days early to intimidate her, make sure she understood who owned what now. Make sure she knew her place. She walked to the hallway closet, pulled down her father's old Remington 12-gauge. Hadn't fired it in years, but it was loaded. Always loaded. She checked the chamber, felt the familiar weight settle in her hands, and walked onto the porch. The same porch where she'd fed a dying boy 20 years ago. Where her father had sat in his rocker. Where 3 generations of Jenkins had watched the sun set over land that was supposed to be forever. Not anymore. The convoy stopped 30 feet from the house, engines idling, windows tinted black. Dust settled slowly. Silence stretched. Then the back door of the lead SUV opened. A man stepped out. White, early 30s. Suit that probably cost more than her truck. Dark hair, styled. Sunglasses that reflected the Alabama sun. He looked like every corporate vulture she'd seen on the news. Every lawyer who'd sent her threatening letters. Every developer who'd smiled while gutting her town. Sarah raised the shotgun. Not aiming at him. Not yet. Just letting him see it. Get off my land, she called out, voice steady despite the rage burning in her chest. You vultures took everything else. You ain't taking the house till Thursday. The man stopped, raised his hands slowly. Ma'am, I'm not. I don't care who you are or what papers you got. Eviction notice says Thursday at 8 a.m. It's Tuesday. You're trespassing. Sarah, please, just listen. She cocked the shotgun. The sound was loud in the quiet. Final. How do you know my name? Her finger moved to the trigger. You been spying on me? That what you'll do now? Send scouts before the sheriff shows up. The man took off his sunglasses with deliberate slowness. His hands were shaking. She could see that even from 30 feet away. I'm not with Apex Holdings, he said quietly. I'm here to stop them. Right? And I'm the Queen of England. Last chance, mister. Get in your fancy cars and... It's Tuesday. Sarah froze. Something in his voice. Something familiar and impossible. What? Today's Tuesday. He took one small step forward, hands still raised. 20 years ago, it was a Tuesday too. You were wearing a red dress with white flowers. The world tilted. The shotgun suddenly felt heavy. You made corn and beans, he continued, voice cracking now. With cornbread. You gave me the burnt piece. Said it had the most flavor. No, it wasn't possible. You told me. He swallowed hard, and she saw tears behind those expensive frames. You told me. I didn't ask for money. I asked if you were hungry. The shotgun barrel dropped an inch. Her hands started shaking. The man took another step, and she saw them. The eyes. Older, harder, carrying weight they shouldn't have to carry. But unmistakably his. The same terrified eyes that had looked at her from a hayloft. The same desperate eyes that had gripped her porch railing and made an impossible promise. Joseph. The name came out as a whisper, barely audible. I came back, Sarah. His voice broke completely. I'm sorry I'm late. I'm 20 years late. But I came back to pay my debt. The shotgun slipped from her hands, clattered on the porch wood. Her knees buckled. Joseph ran, caught her before she hit the ground, arms around her like he was still that 10-year-old boy holding on for dear life. I got you, he whispered into her hair. I got you, and I swear to God, they're not taking your home. Sarah couldn't speak, could only shake in his arms and weep for everything lost and found in the space between a promise and its keeping. They stood frozen on the porch for what felt like hours but was probably seconds. Sarah pulled back, stared at his face like she was trying to solve an equation that didn't make sense. Her hands gripped his expensive suit jacket, wrinkling fabric that cost more than her monthly mortgage payment. "You can't be him," she whispered. "That boy he was skin and bones. He was nobody. And you're a ghost." Joseph's voice was rough. "Yeah, I know." She shook her head, stepped back, eyes scanning him head to toe. The tailored suit, the polished shoes caked now with Alabama dust, the watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her truck. He looked like money, like power, like everything that had been taken from her for 3 years. "Prove it," she said suddenly. "Prove you're him and not some apex lawyer playing mind games." Joseph understood. Money couldn't buy this, couldn't shortcut this. He needed to give her something only that boy would know. He closed his eyes, reached back 20 years. "The first night you gave me corn and beans. Yellow corn, not white. Lima beans, not black-eyed peas. The cornbread was burnt on the bottom because your oven ran hot. You said the burnt pieces had the most flavor." He opened his eyes. "You were lying. You just didn't want me to feel bad about eating the worst piece." Sarah's breath caught. "The second night was chicken and rice. You gave me the drumstick. Said you preferred the wing, but I saw you watching me eat, and I knew you were still hungry." Her hand went to her mouth. "Night 3 you made succotash. I didn't know what it was. Never had it before. You laughed. First time I heard you laugh and said, 'Baby, it's just corn and beans together. Best of both worlds.'" His voice cracked. "I ate 3 plates. "Stop," Sarah whispered, but he couldn't stop. 20 years of memory poured out. "Night 4 you brought sweet tea. I'd never had sweet tea. Thought it was medicine at first. You sat with me that night. Didn't talk. Just sat. That was the night I stopped shaking." Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "Night 5 you asked my name. I told you Joseph. You said, 'That's a good strong name. A survivor's name.' Nobody had ever said my name like that. Like it meant something. 'Joseph, please.' Night 6 it rained. You brought a blanket. Told me to sleep in the barn loft where it was dry. I asked why you were helping me. You said, 'Because you're a child and you're hungry and that's enough.'" Sarah was sobbing now, hands covering her face. "Night 7 the sheriff came. You stood on this porch and watched them put me in the car. I screamed that I'd pay you back. That I'd get rich and come back and pay you everything I owed." He stepped closer. "You smiled, Sarah. Through your tears you smiled. And you said, 'You don't owe me nothing, baby. You just live.'" She looked up at him, mascara running, 20 years of exhaustion in her eyes. "But I did owe you," Joseph said quietly. "I owed you everything. And I'm here to pay it." Sarah stared at him, at the boy who'd been broken, at the man who'd become unbreakable, at the promise she'd forgotten because promises like that didn't come true for women like her. "You really came back," she whispered. "I really came back. 20 years. 20 years. Something broke in her then. The dam she'd built to survive, to keep going, to hold this farm together with pride and stubbornness. It shattered. She collapsed against him, and Joseph caught her, held her while she shook with 2 decades of being strong, being alone, being forgotten. "They're taking my home," she sobbed into his shoulder. "Thursday. Sheriff's coming Thursday." Joseph's arms tightened around her. When he spoke, his voice was cold steel. "No, they're not. You don't understand. Apex Holdings, they own the bank, they own the county, they—" "Sarah." He pulled back, made her look at him. "I didn't come back here to watch you lose. I came back to make sure you win." She saw it then, in his eyes. The boy was still there, still hungry, still desperate. But now he had teeth. "I need you to trust me," he said. "Can you do that?" Sarah looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Good. Now let's go inside. We have 36 hours to save your farm, and I need you to tell me everything." Inside, the farmhouse was a skeleton. Joseph stopped in the doorway, taking it in. Empty walls where pictures had hung. Rectangles of unfaded paint marking where furniture had stood for decades. The living room held only a worn couch and a single lamp. Boxes lined the hallway, half-packed, abandoned. Sarah watched him absorb it, shame burning in her chest. "I sold what I could," she said quietly. "Pawned the rest. Wasn't enough." Joseph's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Just moved to the kitchen table, one of the few pieces left, and set down his briefcase. Sarah followed, sat across from him in the chair her father had built 40 years ago. "Tell me everything," he said. "Start from the beginning." Sarah took a breath. 3 years ago, Apex Holdings bought out First National Bank of Crenshaw County. Within 6 months, they'd restructured every farm loan in the region, raised interest rates, changed terms, added fees that weren't in the original contracts. Joseph pulled out a laptop, fingers already moving. "Go on." "They targeted black-owned farms specifically, used tax loopholes, environmental violations they made up, eminent domain claims for pipelines that don't exist yet. My neighbors lost their land first. The Washingtons, the Clarks, the Jeffersons, all gone." Her voice hardened. "I held out longer than most. Refinanced twice. Worked 3 jobs. But last year they got the county to reassess my property taxes. Tripled them overnight. Said the land was worth more than it was." "Let me guess," Joseph said, not looking up from his screen. "You couldn't pay the new assessment. They filed foreclosure. Filed it, fast-tracked it, and bought the debt themselves at auction. Now they own my mortgage and the foreclosure order. Even if you paid what I owe." She stopped, shook her head. "Even if you paid it, the legal seizure is already in motion. Judge signed off 2 weeks ago. Sheriff has his orders. Thursday at 8 a.m. I'm out." Joseph was quiet for a long moment, reading something on his screen. Then he looked up, and Sarah barely recognized him. The grief was gone. The softness. What remained was something sharp and cold and absolutely certain. "Here's what you need to understand about me, Sarah. I didn't become a billionaire by playing fair. I became a billionaire by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than everyone else." He turned the laptop toward her. "Apex Holdings, LLC. Registered in Delaware. Parent company, Sentinel Capital Group. Owned by Marcus Trent, who sits on the board of 3 banks, 2 pipeline companies, and donates heavily to every judge in this county." Sarah stared at the web of connections on the screen. "How did you?" "I have people. And those people have been investigating Apex since my plane left New York." He pulled up another window. "Spreadsheets. Financial documents. They're not just stealing land, Sarah. They're running a fraud scheme, inflating property values, forcing foreclosures, then flipping the land to energy companies for 10 times what they paid. That's illegal. Extremely. But no one's looking because Trent owns the people who should be looking." Joseph smiled, and it wasn't kind. "But he doesn't own me." He opened his phone, put it on speaker, dialed. It rang once. "Miller." A woman's voice, sharp and efficient. "Catherine, I need the full team on a conference call in 10 minutes. Pull Morrison from the London office. Get Davidson out of court. This is priority alpha." "Sir, the merger is cancelled. Everything is cancelled. We have 36 hours to dismantle a criminal enterprise in rural Alabama, and I need everyone." A pause. "Understood. 10 minutes." He hung up, looked at Sarah. "I don't play by their rules," he said quietly. "I play by mine. And my rules say that no one, not Trent, not Apex, not the entire state of Alabama, takes your home." Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. "Hope. What do you need from me?" she asked. "Every document you have. Loan papers, tax assessments, foreclosure notices, everything." "And Sarah?" He reached across the table, took her hand. "I need you to let me fight for you. Can you do that?" She looked at their hands, his smooth and pale, hers calloused and dark. 20 years and $1 billion between them. But the grip was the same as when he'd held onto her porch railing and made an impossible promise. "Yeah," she whispered. "I can do that." Joseph squeezed her hand once, then released it and turned back to his laptop. The war had begun. The Crenshaw County Community Center hadn't been this packed in years. Folding chairs crammed wall to wall, people standing in the back, spilling into the hallway. Apex Holdings had called an emergency community meeting to discuss economic development opportunities, which everyone knew meant finalizing their conquest of what little remained. Sarah sat in the third row, hands folded in her lap, trying to be invisible. Around her, she recognized faces. The few neighbors who hadn't lost everything yet. The shop owners watching their town die. The pastor whose church was next on Apex's list. At the front, a makeshift stage had been set up. 3 men in suits sat behind a folding table with the Apex Holdings logo projected on the wall behind them. The center man, Marcus Trent, mid-50s and silver-haired, wore confidence like cologne. "Thank you all for coming," Trent began, voice smooth as oil. "We at Apex Holdings believe in transparency. That's why we wanted to address concerns about our recent acquisitions in person." "You mean theft?" someone shouted from the back. Trent smiled, didn't even blink. "We understand change is difficult, but progress requires sacrifice. The pipeline project will bring jobs, revenue, modernization to a region that, frankly," he paused, let his gaze sweep over the predominantly black crowd, "has been economically stagnant for decades." The condescension was thick enough to choke on. "Now, we have until Thursday to finalize the last few holdout properties. I encourage cooperation. Legal challenges will only delay the inevitable and cost you more in the long run." Sarah's hands clenched. She stood, voice shaking but clear. "You manipulated the tax codes. You bought the judges. You're not bringing progress, you're—" "Ma'am," one of the Apex lawyers, younger, sharper, cut her off. "Apex Holdings has operated fully within the law. If you have complaints, you're welcome to file them with the county office, which, as you know, has already reviewed and approved all our permits." His smile was a scalpel. "Your eviction is scheduled for Thursday at 8 a.m. I suggest you use your time packing." Laughter from the Apex side of the room. "Their people. Their plants." Sarah felt humiliation burn through her chest. She opened her mouth to respond. The back doors opened. Every head turned. Joseph Miller walked in alone. No entourage. No fanfare. Just a man in a perfectly tailored suit striding down the center aisle with the kind of certainty that made people instinctively move aside. He didn't look at Sarah. Didn't look at anyone. Just walked straight to the stage. Trent frowned. "Sir, this is a private." Joseph climbed the steps, walked directly to the table, and stood there, waiting. "Excuse me," Trent said, irritation creeping into his voice. "This meeting is for residents and stakeholders. Unless you have business with Apex." "I do." Joseph's voice carried without him raising it. "My name is Joseph Miller, and as of 9 a.m. this morning, I own Sentinel Capital Group." The room went dead silent. Trent's face went pale. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Joseph pulled out his phone, pulled up a document, and handed it to Trent. "Hostile takeover. Completed at market open. I now control 100% of Sentinel's assets, which includes—" He smiled, cold and precise. "Apex Holdings, LLC." The lawyer tried to stand. "Mr. Trent, don't listen to this." "Sit down, Richardson." Joseph didn't even look at him. "You're fired. So is Peterson. So is everyone in this room wearing an Apex badge." He turned to face the crowd. "As of this morning, I don't just own the mortgages. I don't just own the bank. I own the parent company, the subsidiaries, and every fraudulent land deal you've executed in the past 3 years." Trent found his voice. "You can't just." "I already did." Joseph reached into his jacket, pulled out a stack of papers, and dropped them on the table. "Here's a partial list of illegal activities my legal team documented in the last 12 hours. Tax fraud, bribery, falsified environmental reports, coerced foreclosures, wire fraud." He leaned forward. You targeted vulnerable communities because you thought they couldn't fight back. You were wrong. He picked up one document from the pile. Sarah's foreclosure notice. Held it up so the whole room could see. Then he tore it in half. The sound echoed. Sarah Jenkins' property is no longer in foreclosure. Neither is the Washington farm, or the Clark property, or any of the 37 illegal seizures Apex executed. He tore the paper again, and again. Let the pieces fall like snow. Consider this your notice. Apex Holdings is dissolved. Effective immediately. The room erupted. Gasps. Shouts. Someone started crying. Trent stood, shaking with rage. You have no idea what you've just done. I have connections. Lawyers. You can't. Joseph finally looked at him. Really looked. And Trent stopped talking. I eat men like you for breakfast, Joseph said quietly. Try me. He turned, walked off the stage and straight to Sarah. Held out his hand. Let's go home, he said. Sarah took it, tears streaming, and let him lead her through a standing ovation she barely heard. Outside, in the parking lot, she finally found her voice. You bought the whole company? I told you, Joseph said simply. I don't play by their rules. They drove back to the farm in silence. Joseph's driver navigated the red clay roads while Sarah stared out the window, watching her county roll past like a dream she'd forgotten she'd had. Fields that would stay fields now. Homes that would stay homes. The Washington place still had its porch light on. Back at the farmhouse, Joseph dismissed his driver and security team. Give us the night, he said. They disappeared down the road, leaving just the two of them standing in the driveway as twilight settled over Alabama. Sarah climbed the porch steps, sat in her father's old spot. Joseph joined her, and for a while they just sat, listening to crickets and watching fireflies blink in the overgrown fields. I need to pay you back, Sarah said finally. Joseph turned to look at her. What? For what you did today. The company buyout, the lawyers, all of it. She stood, went inside, came back with a yellow legal pad and a pen, sat down and started writing. I don't know how much it cost, but we can work out a payment plan. Maybe set up an installment agreement, or I could sign the farm over as collateral until... Sarah, stop. I can get a third job. Work nights at the packaging plant in Montgomery. Pay you back over time. Sarah. He took the pad from her hands gently but firmly. No. She looked at him and he saw it. The pride. The independence. The same stubborn dignity that had made her feed a starving boy when she could barely feed herself. I don't accept charity, she said, voice tight. Not from you, not from anybody. This isn't charity. Then what is it? Joseph set down the legal pad, chose his words carefully. 20 years ago, you invested in me when I was worthless. A bad stock. No value, no future, nothing to offer. You invested anyway. He gestured at the farm, at her. This is just the dividend. Sarah shook her head. That's a pretty way of saying you're paying me back for sandwiches with millions of dollars. That's not a dividend, Joseph. That's charity dressed up in a suit. He flinched. She was right and he knew it. You want to honor what I did? Sarah stood, crossed her arms. Then honor it right. I didn't feed you so you'd owe me. I fed you because it was the right thing to do. Because you deserved dignity, not pity. Her voice hardened. So don't you dare pity me now. I don't. Yes, you do. You flew in like some white knight, bought the whole company, solved all my problems without asking what I needed, what I wanted. She paced the porch. I didn't need a savior, Joseph. I needed a fair shake. I needed the system to not be rigged. That's what you could have given me. Joseph sat back, the words hitting like physical blows. He'd spent 12 hours and God knows how much money buying Apex to save her. And he'd done it wrong. You're right, he said quietly. Sarah stopped pacing. What? You're right. I came here to pay a debt, but I'm treating you like you're helpless. Like you need me to fix everything. He looked up at her. That's not who you are. That's never been who you are. She sat back down, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. So what do we do? Joseph asked. Because I'm not leaving. and I'm not taking the farm as payment. But I hear you. I can't just throw money at you and walk away feeling like I've balanced the scales. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then, you said Apex was running a fraud scheme, targeting black farmers across the South. Yes. How many farms did they take? 37 in this county alone. Probably hundreds across Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. And you own all that now? Joseph nodded slowly, beginning to see where she was going. Then don't just give me my farm back, Sarah said, fire in her eyes now. Give all of them back. Every family Apex stole from. And then, she leaned forward. Then help us build something that makes sure it never happens again. Joseph stared at her. This woman. This incredible woman who'd had everything stripped away and still thought about everyone else first. Not charity, he said. Not charity, she confirmed. Partnership. You've got the money and the lawyers. We've got the land and the knowledge. We build something together. Something that lasts. Joseph smiled. Really smiled. For the first time in 20 years, the debt felt like it might actually have a path to being paid. Okay, he said. Let's build something. Together. Sarah held out her hand. They shook on it there on the porch where it all began. One condition, she added. What's that? You stay for dinner. I'm making corn and beans. Joseph laughed, and it sounded like coming home. I wouldn't miss it for the world. 6 months later, the Jenkins farm didn't look like the same place. The fields that had been overgrown with kudzu were now planted with collard greens, tomatoes, squash, and corn, real crops, grown by real people who owned shares in the cooperative. The old barn that Joseph had hidden in 20 years ago had been rebuilt, its red paint gleaming in the spring sun, now serving as the processing and distribution center. The farmhouse itself had been restored, not renovated into something unrecognizable, but carefully brought back to what it had been when Sarah's grandfather first built it. And on the front lawn, where weeds had once choked everything, stood a brand new building. Modern but respectful, with wide windows and a wraparound porch that echoed the farmhouse. A sign hung above the entrance, hand-carved wood with brass letters. The Jenkins Table, Community Food Cooperative and Resource Center. Today was opening day. Over 300 people crowded the lawn. Families from across Crenshaw County and beyond. The Washingtons back on their land. The Clarks, farming again. Every family Apex had displaced, returned, and restored. News crews from Montgomery and Birmingham. Even a team from CNN who'd gotten word that the billionaire tech CEO who'd dismantled a predatory development company was now running a food co-op in rural Alabama. Sarah stood on the porch in a new dress, still red with white flowers because some things were tradition, holding one side of a ceremonial ribbon. Joseph stood beside her in jeans and a button-down shirt. No tie, sleeves rolled up, holding the other side. He'd lost the Manhattan pallor. 6 months of Alabama sun had given him color. 6 months of actual purpose had given him something more. Pastor Williams stepped forward with the microphone. Before we cut this ribbon, I think we should hear from the folks who made this possible. Joseph gestured to Sarah. You first. She took the microphone, looked out at the crowd, and felt her throat tighten. Y'all know me. I'm not one for speeches. But I want to say this, what we're opening today isn't just a building. It's proof that when people care more about each other than profit, we can build something that lasts. She paused. This co-op is owned by all of us. Run by all of us. The food we grow feeds our community first, then we sell the surplus. The jobs we created go to our people. The profits stay here, in Crenshaw County, building the future our grandparents dreamed of. Applause rippled through the crowd. Sarah handed the microphone to Joseph. He held it awkwardly, still not comfortable with public speaking, but he tried. 20 years ago, Sarah fed me when I was starving. She didn't do it for recognition or reward. She did it because it was right. He looked at her. She taught me that the measure of a person isn't what they have, but what they give when they have nothing to spare. I spent 2 decades trying to pay her back. Turns out, the only way to do that was to help her feed more people. He gestured to the building behind them. The Jenkins Table will provide free meals to anyone who needs them. No questions asked. No judgment. We'll also run job training programs, offer microloans to farmers, and fight like hell against anyone who tries to take your land again. His voice hardened on that last part and people cheered. I stepped down as CEO of my tech company last month, Joseph continued, and that got gasps. I'm staying here, running the philanthropic foundation from the guest house on this farm. Because for the first time in my life, I'm not just making money. I'm making a difference. He looked at Sarah. She nodded. Together, they raised scissors and cut the ribbon. The crowd erupted. People surged forward, pouring into the building to see the commercial kitchen. The dining hall with tables made by local craftsmen, the classrooms, the resource center with computers and legal aid services. Joseph and Sarah stayed on the porch, watching. You really staying? Sarah asked quietly. Joseph looked at the guest house visible beyond the barn. A small, simple cottage he'd fixed up himself over the past few months. His home now. The first place that had ever felt like one. I'm really staying, he said. Sarah smiled. Good. Because tomorrow we've got 40 acres to plant. And I'm putting you on the tractor. I don't know how to drive a tractor. Then I guess you're learning. Joseph laughed, and it was easy now. Natural. The sound of a man who'd finally found where he belonged. Inside the building, someone started playing music. People were dancing. Children running. Food being served on plates that looked suspiciously like the one Sarah had handed a starving boy 2 decades ago. Thank you, Joseph said quietly. Sarah took his hand. For what? For seeing me when I was invisible. She squeezed his hand. Thank you for coming back. They stood there together as the sun set over the farm, watching their community celebrate, and for the first time in 20 years, the debt felt paid. Not in money, in meaning. 2 years after the opening, the Jenkins farm had become the heart of the county. The cooperative fed over 500 families monthly. 15 people worked full-time. 50 more worked part-time. 3 other counties had requested help starting their own versions of the Jenkins Table. Joseph and Sarah had become an unlikely but effective team. Her wisdom, his resources, their shared understanding of what hunger truly costs. On a Tuesday evening in late summer, they sat on the farmhouse porch like they did most evenings now. Iced tea sweating in glasses. The sun painting the fields gold. Dinner cooling on the table behind them, corn, beans, cornbread. Always corn, beans, and cornbread. You hear the Patterson farm is coming back? Sarah said, rocking slowly in her father's old chair that Joseph had restored. I heard. Joseph sat on the porch steps, same spot he'd sat 20 years ago. That makes 39 families back on their land. 39. Sarah shook her head, smiling. Who'd have thought? You did. She laughed softly. I thought we'd save maybe 5 farms. You're the one who went and bought half of Alabama. You told me to think bigger. They fell into comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when 2 people have stopped performing for each other and just exist. A cardinal called from the oak tree. Fireflies started their nightly dance. Then Joseph heard it. A rustling in the cornfield. Not wind. Something moving deliberately, trying to be quiet and failing. He sat up straighter. Sarah heard it too. They exchanged a glance. The rustling got closer, then stopped. Joseph stood slowly, peered toward the field. Hello! Silence. Then, from between the cornstalks, a child emerged. A girl, maybe 8 or 9. Latino, dark hair matted, wearing clothes that were torn and filthy. She was barefoot, bleeding from a cut on her arm, shaking like a leaf. Her eyes were huge and terrified. The same eyes Joseph had seen in the mirror 20 years ago. She saw the food on the table. Her gaze locked onto it. Desperate. Hungry. Sarah stood carefully, not making any sudden movements. She and Joseph had learned to recognize the signs. This child was running from something. Or someone. Joseph, Sarah said quietly. He nodded. Understood. Slowly backed up to give the girl space. Sarah smoothed her red floral dress, still the same style, always the same style, and picked up a clean plate from the table. She spooned corn, beans, and cornbread onto it. walked to the porch steps, set it down gently. Then she stepped back. "Come on up, child," Sarah said, voice soft and warm. "You're safe here." The girl didn't move, looked between Sarah and Joseph like she was calculating whether to run. "I know you're scared," Sarah continued, "but you don't have to be. Not here." The girl's stomach growled audibly. She bit her lip, torn between fear and hunger. Sarah knelt down slowly, eye level with the girl. "What's your name, baby?" A whisper. "Maria." "Maria. That's a beautiful name. I'm Sarah. This is Joseph." She gestured to the plate. "Are you hungry, Maria?" The girl nodded, tears starting to fall. Sarah's voice was gentle as gospel. "I didn't ask if you had money, child. I asked if you were hungry." Maria broke, ran to the porch, grabbed the plate, and ate like she was dying. Joseph brought water. Sarah brought a napkin, sat beside her on the steps, and just waited. Patient, kind, exactly as she'd been 20 years ago. When Maria finished, Sarah pulled out her phone. "I'm going to call some people who can help you, okay? Make sure you're safe. Get you somewhere warm." Maria grabbed Sarah's hand. "Please don't send me back." "Back where, baby?" "To him." Sarah and Joseph exchanged a look. They both knew that desperation. "We won't," Sarah promised. "You're safe now. I promise." Joseph knelt down too, looked Maria in the eyes. "You know what someone once told me when I was scared and hungry just like you?" Maria shook her head. "They told me I mattered, that I was going to be okay. And you know what? They were right." He smiled. "You matter, Maria, and you're going to be okay too." Maria looked between them. These two people who'd stopped their evening to feed a stranger, to care, to see her, and something in her face shifted. Hope, fragile and new. Sarah made the calls. Child services, but the good kind, the ones Sarah had vetted personally. Within an hour, a social worker Sarah trusted arrived. Maria would go to a foster home Sarah had helped establish, one that actually cared. As the car drove away, Maria pressed her face to the window, waving. Sarah and Joseph waved back until the taillights disappeared. They returned to the porch, sat back down. The iced tea was warm now, but they drank it anyway. 20 years, Joseph said quietly. "And here we are again," Sarah finished. "Think she'll be okay?" Sarah looked at him, at the man who'd been that terrified child, who'd survived, who'd come back, who'd helped her build something that would outlive them both. "Yeah," she said. "I think she'll be just fine." They sat in the gathering dark, the porch light glowing warm, the door always open, waiting for the next hungry soul who needed to know they mattered. The cycle continued. It always would. Before you go, let me share something powerful about this story. Psychologists call what Joseph experienced delayed reciprocity. When someone helps you and you can't immediately return the favor, it creates what's called a gratitude debt. Studies show this feeling can last decades and actually motivates people to help others, not just repay the original person. But here's what's interesting. Sarah understood something most people don't. True generosity isn't transactional. Research from the University of California found that when we give without expecting return, it activates the same pleasure centers in our brain as receiving gifts. Sarah literally felt good from giving, even when she had nothing. The lesson? If someone helps you and you can't pay them back, pay it forward. That's how one plate of food becomes a movement that feeds thousands. But now I need to tell you something serious, something you need to know. What happened to Sarah in this story is happening in real life right now. It's called heirs property exploitation and predatory land acquisition. According to the USDA, black farmers have lost over 90% of their land since 1920. That's 14 million acres stolen through legal loopholes, discriminatory lending, and tactics exactly like what Apex Holdings used in this story. Companies target communities with unclear property titles, manipulate tax assessments, and force foreclosures. Organizations like the Emergency Land Fund and the Federation of Southern Cooperatives are fighting this right now. If you or someone you know is facing suspicious foreclosure or land pressure, document everything, get legal help immediately, and don't sign anything under pressure. Knowledge is power. Sarah almost lost everything because she was fighting alone. Don't let that be you or someone you love. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Be like Sarah. Help someone who can't pay you back. That's the gratitude part. But also be informed. If you see predatory practices in your community, speak up. Share this information. Protect each other. One act of kindness can change a life. One person with knowledge can save a community. Before you go, let me share something powerful about this story. Psychologists call what Joseph experienced delayed reciprocity. When someone helps you and you can't immediately return the favor, it creates what's called a gratitude debt. Studies show this feeling can last decades and actually motivates people to help others, not just repay the original person. But here's what's interesting. Sarah understood something most people don't. True generosity isn't transactional. Research from the University of California found that when we give without expecting return, it activates the same pleasure centers in our brain as receiving gifts. Sarah literally felt good from giving, even when she had nothing. The lesson? If someone helps you and you can't pay them back, pay it forward. That's how one plate of food becomes a movement that feeds thousands. But now I need to tell you something serious, something you need to know. What happened to Sarah in this story is happening in real life right now. It's called heirs property exploitation and predatory land acquisition. According to the USDA, black farmers have lost over 90% of their land since 1920. That's 14 million acres stolen through legal loopholes, discriminatory lending, and tactics exactly like what Apex Holdings used in this story. Companies target communities with unclear property titles, manipulate tax assessments, and force foreclosures. Organizations like the Emergency Land Fund and the Federation of Southern Cooperatives are fighting this right now. If you or someone you know is facing suspicious foreclosure or land pressure, document everything, get legal help immediately, and don't sign anything under pressure. Knowledge is power. Sarah almost lost everything because she was fighting alone. Don't let that be you or someone you love. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Be like Sarah. Help someone who can't pay you back. That's the gratitude part. But also be informed. If you see predatory practices in your community, speak up. Share this information. Protect each other. One act of kindness can change a life. One person with knowledge can save a community.